First of all, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank the organisers for being so flexible with the schedule. I got stuck in the fog in Frankfurt this morning. I know there's a few Brits out there, so you guys all know about fog more than anybody. I also want to apologise to Paul and the team that were down here just before me, because the conversation was going really, really well, and unfortunately we had to cut it off. But I suspect that that conversation will continue in the bar later anyway, so it's probably, all in all, probably a good thing. So, as Richard said, my name is Marc Gayler. I'm from Microsoft. Thank you very much for inviting me out here. I'm going to promise to do two things in the next 20-25 minutes. One is I'm not going to show you any slides on PowerPoint. Secondly, I'm not going to try and sell you SharePoint, so I think you guys will appreciate that. So a little bit about me, just to put in context what you're about to see. I am part of a group in Microsoft. We have something called the Open Software Initiative, and basically my job is to travel around the world advising governments about the openness and interoperability features of the various technology that we have. So that obviously applies to open government initiatives. So we're working with a number of governments around the world, federal, state, local, helping them get data out of their operational systems, helping them publish it in a way that it can be reused by citizens and developers alike. So rather than bore you to tears with some PowerPoint slides, and particularly given the schedule change, what I'm really going to do over the next 15 minutes is show you some of the things that we've been doing, show you some of the technology we have, and hopefully give you some really cool resources and tools that you guys can take away and reuse in the comfort of your own open data project. My experience with open data and open government is about 3 or 4 years old. I am a resident of the city of Vancouver. I live in Vancouver, Canada, which means that not only am I, from a technology perspective, am I an aficionado of open government, I'm also a beneficiary of the excellent work that David Eves and the city of Vancouver have been doing from a citizen perspective. So I'm kind of living, I'm walking and talking, if you like, from an open government point of view. Before I kind of give you the demo, I want to introduce something that some of you will certainly be familiar with, but not necessarily all of you, which is the emergence of cloud computing platforms. So for those of you that are not familiar with cloud computing, essentially think of cloud computing as an operating system or an application platform that runs on the internet. In its simplistic form, that's how I would describe it. Think of it as the IT equivalent of the electricity grid, if you like. So it's out there, it's in the ether, you can connect to it. It doesn't really matter what kind of device you have, doesn't matter what interface you have, doesn't matter what application you have. Cloud computing platforms are inherently open, and this is one of the reasons that makes them an ideal candidate for open government projects and open data projects in particular. So Microsoft's cloud computing platform is called Windows Azure, and what I'm going to show you is some of the tools and projects that we've developed around Microsoft's cloud computing platform. What you're looking at here is something called the Open Government Data Initiative, or OGDI, and think of this as an open API that sits on top of the cloud. And essentially what OGDI enables you to do as a government or as an owner of data, it allows you to very easily publish data into the cloud. As a citizen or as an end user, it allows you to very easily browse and access that data and build it into your application. I'm going to give you a quick demo of how it works in a second. And essentially what this does is it brings together two challenges that we find on a day-to-day basis in many open government projects around the world. From a government data perspective, governments have challenges getting data out of their operational systems, and they're often reluctant to publish that data in a way that's reusable by citizens and application developers. On the other side, developers get frustrated because governments tend to publish data in PDFs or zip files, and even though that does satisfy the first criteria of Tim Berners-Lee 5 stars of open data, we clearly would have better value out of that data if we could kind of hit the 2, 3, and 4 stars in terms of the way that data is going to get used. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a quick walk through this interface. I know this may seem a little bit techy, so for those of you who are not technical in the audience, just bear with us for a second, because I'm going to show you the interface first, and I'm going to show you a couple of projects that have been developed with the interface, which will probably be a bit more interesting, quite frankly. But I want to show you some interesting features of this, and talk about the advantages of cloud computing and why it benefits open government and open data projects particularly. So just bear with me for a second. So everything you're seeing here, by the way, is live. So the additional benefit of me not showing you PowerPoint slides is that this demo could fail at any moment. So if you're one of those guys that like to see the Microsoft guys squirm on stage, then this could be an opportunity for you. So what you're looking at here is the kind of the default interface of the Open Government Data Initiative interface. Everything you're seeing here, by the way, if you guys want to follow along at home kind of thing, the URLs, these are all live URLs. This application is actually running on the cloud computing platform, but as you can see, it looks just like a normal web app. And what you see here is it's just a listing of data. Okay, so we've got some data sets already preloaded into this demo. But there's a couple of other things you'll notice. At the top, you'll see there's some kind of trending data, there's some filters. We can actually query this data at this point. So we can do some basic kind of querying and that kind of thing. But let's open up a data set and see what that gives us. So I'm just going to pick a data set at random, and Wi-Fi permitting, that will load up. And what you're going to see is essentially a snapshot of the data within the OGDI interface. So again, this data, as it loads, this data is hosted in the Windows Azure Cloud Platform. And the advantage of this, straight away, is that we can put small amounts of data in the cloud, or we can put huge amounts of data in the cloud. And if you think of this from a government perspective, the government doesn't have to invest up front in tons of hardware and software, and tons of software server licenses, for example, to do this very quickly and relatively inexpensively. And again, I'm going to give you some real-life examples in a second. So what you notice in this interface, this is a basic data browser. It basically allows you to take a quick snapshot of the data. And what you'll notice, we can do some basic querying here if we want to. But notice in the middle, we have a full query URL. So OGDI uses URI inherently for its addressing. And what this means is, if I have an application that's RSS or OData or KML aware, I can just cut and paste that URI directly into my application or my other service, and it just pastes the data straight in. So if you're using Power Pivot for Excel, for example, you can just copy that URL straight into your application. The advantage of this is, from a user perspective, imagine a government analyst, for example, they don't have to know the location of the data, they don't have to know the format of the data, they don't have to know how the data is structured, it doesn't matter. OGDI does all that kind of hard graft for them. So that's from an end user perspective. I want to show you now the developer interface, because this has some cool features as well. So what you're seeing here, in the developer tab, what OGDI does for you, as I said, think of it as an open API. It actually generates the code, the application code, to query that data. So if you're an application developer, it kind of does the hard work for you. Whereas we all know application developers hate doing the database queries, they just want to code the app and do the sexy stuff. OGDI takes away that middleware pain, if you like, and it generates the code for you automatically. What you're seeing here is a code sample for ASP.NET. But if I click on the drop-down, you'll see that we support different development tools. And this is made possible by the openness of the Windows Azure platform. So whether or not you're using PHP or Java or Ruby or Python, Windows Azure doesn't care, the data storage doesn't care, OGDI doesn't care. So if I just click on the PHP, we'll wait for that to grind through, and what it's done is it's automatically converted the code from C# to a PHP code sample. So this is, think of this then as a solution accelerator to connect government data to developers. These are two things that are traditionally somewhat challenging to do. Okay, so it makes it really easy to publish data in the cloud. and it makes it really, really easy for developers to access that data through an open API, irrespective of what development tool they're using. So, that's kind of the brief tour around OGDI. Like I said, I know it's a bit techy. I'm now going to show you a couple of examples. So the first one I want to show you is something called Eye on Earth. This was developed by the European Environment Agency. And what Eye on Earth does is it maps thousands and thousands of data points of air and water quality across the European continent. It allows end users to rate the quality of the data, like if I'm at a particular beach, government says the beach is high quality, I'm at the beach, I reckon it's low quality. So it allows me to actually rate the quality of that data, and I can use my mobile device to actually send a rating back to the system. You can imagine that this application contains thousands and thousands of data points, millions and millions of data records. It's an ideal cloud computing application. If the government organization to set this up had to invest in the hardware, the servers, the software to do this, it would probably cost millions of dollars. With the cloud computing platform, the cost is much, much lower, and in some cases, the cost is almost zero. So I'll give you another example of that. So this is the scalability of the cloud and the benefits of that. So this last example is from a town called the city of Medicine Hat, which is a little prairie town in the middle of Alberta. And it's a town that David and I know very well, I'm sure. So the reason I wanted to show you this, if you look, this is the actual data catalog of the city of Medicine Hat in Alberta. So what I just showed you was a fairly substantial application built by the European Union, which plots millions and millions of data points. This application was built by a little town in the middle of Alberta with a population of 60,000 people. And the reason that they can do this with the cloud computing platform is because the entry cost is practically zero. I know it's dangerous for me to say that because I'm from Microsoft, but it's remarkably low. The actual running cost of this site for that city probably is about $200 a month. That's it. The other cool thing is the OGDI solution itself is available from Microsoft. It's free and it's open source, so you guys can modify it to your heart's content. I know that's a bit shocking because I'm from Microsoft, so I'm going to say it again. The OGDI solution is free and it's open source. So the reason I wanted to show you this example is because this is a very simple example of where we can go to very small quantities of data, and these guys are already using the benefits of the cloud for their open data project. So quite frankly, we've got the EU at one end, we've got the tiny town of Medicine Hat in Alberta at the other end. So that's the real power of cloud computing. It's open, it's scalable, it has a very low entry cost, and with the solution accelerator of OGDI, you can get data in and out very, very easily, and it encourages developers to consume that data in applications. So that's it. I know time is short. Again, thanks to the organizers for being so flexible. Thanks to you guys for listening. I'll make sure you get the links to these resources so you can have a play with this. One last thing, just as I finish, for those of you with government European data, we've also set up this sandbox site with a bunch of European data, so you can go and play with this, you can use the interface, there's some sample applications on here. Please play with it, load the data up and enjoy it. And this is govdata.eu is the URL for this site, and that's particularly focused at the European market. So enjoy the projects, all success to you guys with your own data projects, and if you have any other questions, please feel free to see me afterwards. I drink beer. Thanks guys.
Okay, we have a few minutes. Very kindly, you've done an incredible job of keeping to time. He's done an incredible job of keeping to time, which is like bonus points already. It's a drink in the bar afterwards. But are there any questions that people would have or like to ask in 5 minutes before we go out here? Take it away. It's kind of, I don't know what it's like, obviously I've never been a rock star, sadly, but what it's like looking out into the darkness of kind of, you know, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Can you guarantee that my data doesn't leave the European Union?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can't. It's a great question because, as I think many of you guys are aware, one of the challenges with cloud computing is, of course, data sovereignty issues and some national legislation around that. In North America, we have a particular challenge, of course, with the Patriot Act, which makes it somewhat challenging for some government organizations to host their data in a public cloud. However, the good news is, what we found is that most governments, even where there is legislation in place that might make that difficult, the data that we're talking about in most open government projects today is non-personal private data. So often the restrictive legislation around data privacy and security doesn't apply to these kinds of data sets. So we're seeing many governments using public cloud services in cross-border scenarios. And it's, I don't want to say it's not an issue, that wouldn't be fair, because each country and each government has its own jurisdiction and legislative requirements, of course. But what we're seeing is it's less of an issue than, say, with a health kind of system or a system that tracks personal and private data. In the EU, Microsoft, for example, we have data centers in the EU. So actually, from an EU point of view, it's not an issue at all, assuming that's acceptable to your particular type of data that you have.
Any more questions? Question over there.
Yes, so I have a question that you said you have a piece of free open source software, but does it still have dependency on your proprietary software? So can I use it without using any proprietary software, or it's still just part of it which depends fully on your proprietary stuff?
Yeah, you guys have been working with Microsoft for too long. So it's a good question. So out of the box, what you see with OGDI, the free open source version that's available on Codeplex, out of the box it's designed to work with Windows Azure, okay? However, we provide the code, and already we've seen some customers that are modifying that code to work with other service platforms, other databases, and to be honest, modifying the code is actually relatively straightforward. So, and we would love you guys to do that. You know, we feel this is a very powerful piece of software. We love the community to contribute to it. We have a French team, for example, who've already built a better version of the default version of OGDI, and that's great to see. So certainly, if that's something that you like a kind of advice and guidance on, then it's certainly something we'd be happy to talk to you about. But by default, understandably, it runs on our cloud platform. And if you guys are wondering what the catch is, that is the catch. It's kind of our way of encouraging customers to use the Microsoft Cloud Platform, of course, but as I said, it's a pretty open interface, so modifying it for something else would be relatively straightforward. Thank you, good question.
Any more?
One at the back there?
Can I ask you what your market share of the open data platform market is currently, and what are your plans to increase it?
That's a really good question. I'm going to give you the best answer I can, which is I have absolutely no idea. What I can tell you is that we have customers in 20 different countries that are using OGDI, Windows, Azure, and a combination of our other cloud technologies to host open data projects. If you go to the govdata.eu site, you'll see many examples of that. I have no idea what the share is. And the reason I don't is because it's not something that we're particularly keen to track. And the reason I say that is that Microsoft fully understands that citizens and developers are not going to go to Microsoft to get government data. That's not what this is about. We actually have a commercial data offering called Data Market. OGDI is about empowering government users and government data owners to do this themselves using our cloud computing platform. Because if you want a piece of data about Medicine Hat, you're going to go to the city of Medicine Hat to get that data. So it's not something that we track. If you go to Codeplex, you'll see how many times OGDI has been downloaded. If you go to the demo site, you'll see how many times the data's been accessed and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't really know what the share is. But like I said, we have 20 countries, project being hosted in 20 countries. around the globe at the moment that are using this technology, and the feedback so far has been extremely positive.
Yeah, I think one last question, if there is one. Or are we done? One last question, if anyone has one, or we wrap. That's one last up at the back now.
One at the back.
Following on slightly from the chap who was asking over there, would Microsoft look favourably or unfavourably on people who were trying to produce a substitute for the server or cloud side component of OGDI? They're trying to produce an open source server side complement for this.
Yeah, so we've seen examples where that's being done. And certainly I'm aware that Microsoft partners have actually assisted in that activity, and that's great. You know, we've made this project open source because we expect it to be reused and modified. It's as simple as that.
You've made the client open source.
Correct, yeah.
Would you object to people producing an open source server component that would replace your offering?
Like I said, the in for Microsoft is to encourage people to use our cloud computing platform, of course. I wouldn't object to it, but it's obviously not on our.
Yeah.
It's not. It wouldn't be high on our priority list, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, we do actually have a case where it hasn't already happened. Yes, I'll finish off my answer to that. So first of all, this is not all or nothing. It's very important to understand that. When we talk about the cloud can be used in a hybrid mode. So you can combine the cloud with other interfaces. So for example, we built a data catalog, a couple of data catalogs in Canada in cooperation with David Eves, which uses Drupal as a front end, it uses the CCAN as a back end, and it incorporates OGDI and Azure. So this is a hybrid model, and it's certainly something that we would encourage, absolutely. David, did you have any other comments about that?
No, I'm just going to say the guys in the NIMO, there's a small city in the British Columbia called Nanaimo, and it's just the most awesome dev shop in it. So these 6 guys, and they did exactly what you're talking about. They're running OGGI on their own servers, like locally. So it can be done, and I think Microsoft may have helped them, but I'm not sure.
Are those non-Microsoft servers? I think the question was asking, was it they're running?
Yeah, I think they're non-Microsoft servers.
You can run OGDI on Linux.
Yeah, I believe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, so again, I'm being totally transparent here. That's something that, so it's open, so we're very happy for it to be reused. Clearly, running it on with Microsoft servers and other Microsoft software, that would be higher on our priority, but we're always going to be helping customers to interoperate with other non-Microsoft systems. It's something that my team particularly encourages and we specialize in doing. So, yeah, if there's anything like that you're interested in, please let us know.
One last question?
Just one question.
Yeah. Incredibly good.
Keen to know, will you be in the business in this of writing up experience of those technical classes of solutions? So it's one of the problems in this area is people have to figure it out for themselves. So any kind of technical outlines of the variety of solutions people are coming up with and how they do that, gathering that stuff together.
Yeah, we are. So we already have a couple of case studies which I can make available to the group, and certainly publishing kind of particularly these interoperable scenarios where the Microsoft technology is working with non-Microsoft technology is something that my group particularly specializes in. So yeah, we'd be very happy to do that. Okay, I think I've used up as much of the time as I'm allowed. So thanks again to you guys for listening. And
thank you, and for coming all this way.